I found out my husband and sister were cheating on me. See how I turned pain into power. I never imagined life could change so abruptly in a single day. I clearly remember how perfect everything seemed that morning. I woke up feeling in control of my own routine, ready to face another ordinary day at the office, filled with anticipation for an important meeting. Little did I know that that day would be the turning point, a dividing line between who I was and who I would become. The feeling of normalcy was what made the shock even more intense. Everything seemed to follow its usual course, between appointments, emails, and tasks, until I noticed small signs I initially ignored. Glances exchanged between Leonardo and my sister Sophia, messages that quickly disappeared from his phone, small apologies that seemed so banal but carried a weight I still didn't understand. It was a routine I knew, but it began to quietly shatter, and I, distracted by work and life, didn't even notice the storm brewing on the horizon. Everything was mixed with the nervousness of the day of my promotion, which I had been awaiting for months, and which should have been a moment of celebration. Little did I know that it would also be the day that my emotional and personal life would be brutally confronted with the most painful betrayal I could ever imagine. My name is Isabella, I'm 29 years old, and at the time, I was working at a large financial consulting firm, fully dedicated to my career and building the stability I'd always craved. Leonardo had been my husband for 5 years, and I believed I'd found a trustworthy partner, someone who shared my dreams and goals. Sophia, my younger sister, had always been close, and the idea that anything could break our family bond was unimaginable. I was at a stage in my life where I felt every effort was being rewarded: financial stability, professional growth, and a relationship I considered solid. But the truth is, I didn't fully understand the people I shared my life with. Until that moment, my life seemed linear, predictable, and secure, with typical routine challenges, but nothing that threatened my emotional balance. On the surface, everything seemed under control, but deep down, I already felt a diffuse unease, a feeling that something was about to fall apart. On the day of my promotion, everything changed. I walked onto the stage to receive recognition for my hard work and the achievements I'd accumulated over the years. And amid the applause, I noticed shifting looks, forced smiles, and quiet whispers that hinted at something I still didn't understand. It was only when I heard my own name associated with words like humiliation and betrayal that I realized what was happening. Leonardo was involved with Sophia, and she was pregnant with his child. The ground fell apart beneath my feet. The feeling of being exposed in front of all my colleagues, friends, and family was devastating. A mixture of shame, anger, and disbelief overwhelmed me, and for a few seconds, I felt like the whole world had conspired against me. I wanted to scream, cry, disappear, but none of that seemed enough to process the betrayal that had just been so publicly revealed. The pain was both physical and emotional, a tightness in my chest that seemed to prevent me from breathing. At that point, my mind raced with thoughts. How did I not realize it sooner? What happened to my family? How could I have trusted so much and been deceived? Like this? Each question was accompanied by a feeling of helplessness that felt overwhelming. I felt betrayed on multiple levels. Emotionally by the man I loved, familial by the sister I considered close, socially before the people who were witnessing my humiliation. The feeling of vulnerability made me realize that life can change suddenly, and that the people we trust can become responsible for our pain. The public humiliation was a catalyst, but it also awakened me to something I couldn't fully grasp at the time: my own strength. Something inside me began to pulse, an instinct for survival and justice that I didn't yet know how to express, but which would mark the beginning of an intense journey of overcoming. In the midst of so much pain, I realized I needed to maintain clarity and rationality. I couldn't allow myself to be consumed by hatred, even though it was present, vibrant, and incessant. I remembered a prenuptial agreement I had signed years before, guaranteeing complete separation of assets, something that at the time seemed like a bureaucratic detail, but in that moment proved to be a protective shield. With this awareness, I felt a small relief, as if a window of opportunity had opened. I could protect myself financially and act strategically. The emotional pain was still intense, but there was a light of control over my life that I could still hold on to. In that moment, I realized that overcoming it would not only be emotional, but also practical, involving planning, intelligence, and the ability to maintain grace even in the face of such profound betrayal. After partially digesting the public humiliation, I realized I needed to act strategically. I called my lawyer, Helena, who had always been reliable and assertive, and explained the entire situation. Every word that came out of my mouth was filled with pain, but also with determination. Helena listened attentively and devised a plan. First, protect my assets. Second, confront Leonardo and Sofia in a calculated manner, without losing my composure. Third, ensure I emerged from the situation strengthened, without them being able to legally harm me. It was a defining moment. For the first time, I felt that pain could transform into power, that my vulnerability could become strategic strength. Helena taught me that justice and intelligence can go hand in hand, and that I had the right to regain control of my life. In the days that followed, the tension mounted. I had to deal with the constant feeling of betrayal, Leonardo's treacherous messages trying to justify the unjustifiable, and Sofia's disturbing presence, who acted as if nothing had happened. Each interaction tested me, challenged my patience, and forced me to remain steadfast. Anger burned inside, but I couldn't let it dictate my actions. I needed to think clearly, plan every step. It was painful to recognize that, despite my intelligence, I couldn't control the feelings that arose with each reminder of the broken trust. Sleep became difficult, and each night made me relive the day of the promotion, the hidden laughter of the one who had betrayed me, the shame I had felt. But somehow, every tear and every painful thought fueled my determination to get back on my feet. During this period, my professional life became both an escape valve and an arena for reconstruction. I immersed myself in projects, meetings, numbers, and financial strategies, using my work to reaffirm my worth and competence. Each professional victory became a small, silent revenge against the humiliation I had suffered. I discovered that my mind, when directed, could transform pain into productivity, humiliation into motivation. There were still moments of fragility, of course, when I felt like giving up, isolating myself, and letting the world go on without me. But whenever this urge arose, I remembered that my efforts would not be in vain and that my independence depended on my resilience. One of the most difficult challenges was dealing with feelings of family betrayal. Sofia wasn't just my sister. She was someone I loved deeply. Accepting that she had hurt me so deeply required confronting a pain that felt unbearable. But I realized it wasn't about immediate forgiveness, but rather about establishing clear boundaries and protecting my emotional integrity. I began avoiding unnecessary encounters, cutting toxic ties, and prioritizing my well-being. Each decision strengthened me and reminded me that sometimes overcoming requires strategic distancing, even from those we love. This period was a tough learning experience, but essential for rebuilding my self-esteem and sense of trust. Finally, the time came to confront the cheating couple. With Helena's guidance, I organized an elegant but direct meeting. Every word I spoke was measured, every gesture calculated. I didn't need to yell, beg, or humiliate. My strength lay in clarity and assertiveness. I explained my rights, reinforced the protection the prenuptial agreement offered, and outlined the boundaries they needed to respect. The feeling of power, of quiet justice, was liberating. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt in control of the narrative of my life. Leonardo and Sofia, faced with practical reality, realized they could not manipulate or harm my assets. I left that meeting with a sense of emotional and practical victory, knowing that my determination and planning had proven stronger than any pain. After the confrontation, a sense of relief and empowerment began to set in, but I knew that true reconstruction was yet to come. The following weeks were a period of intense reflection. I began to analyze not only what had happened, but also how I had allowed myself to become vulnerable. Every detail of the betrayal, every misperception, now served as lessons about boundaries, self-confidence, and personal protection. I began to record my life goals, revisit investments, and strengthen my financial independence. I discovered that pain, when understood, can become a powerful tool for learning and growth. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with persistent anger and sadness. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about everything I had lost emotionally, questioning my own ability to trust others. The feeling of injustice was constant, and the risk of becoming consumed by resentment was real. But I gradually realized that the best way to overcome this phase was not to fight my feelings, but to learn to channel them constructively. I transformed frustration into discipline, sadness into planning, and each step I took toward autonomy became a silent victory that no one could take away from me. Professionally, I began investing more in myself and my career. Specialization courses, networking, and strategic planning became priorities. Each professional achievement was a reminder that I didn't need to depend on anyone to thrive. The feeling of financial freedom, which had previously been just a distant goal, began to materialize. As a result, my self-esteem gradually restored, and I felt stronger, more capable of dealing with any adversity that might arise. Each step was marked by a balance between emotional intelligence and pragmatism, allowing me to move forward without neglecting my well-being. Socially, I realized that some friendships were superficial and didn't deserve my emotional investment. I began surrounding myself with people who truly supported my growth and well-being. This reorganization of relationships was painful, but necessary. I learned the importance of recognizing who truly deserves trust and who doesn't add value to my life. This emotional clarity became as important as financial stability. Without it, no external success would have any real meaning. The journey of overcoming obstacles wasn't just material or professional. It was also a profound reconstruction of who I was as a person. In this process, I realized something essential. Overcoming requires concrete action, but also self-compassion. It's not about blaming yourself for what happened, but recognizing yourself as someone capable of resisting and rebuilding. I began to allow myself small daily victories, discrete celebrations of each goal achieved, each successful investment, each assertive decision, each moment of emotional clarity became concrete proof that I could triumph over pain. The feeling of control returned to my life, but now, in a mature and conscious way, the result of planning, strategy, and self-awareness. Over time, I realized the pain was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. I began redirecting my energy towards something bigger, my own life. I developed self-care routines, exercise, and meditation, which helped manage anxiety and clear my mind. Each morning was a reminder that I could choose my reaction to the past. Gradually, I felt the feeling of vulnerability being replaced by confidence. I discovered that facing betrayal with intelligence, not raw emotion, strengthened me more than any impulsive revenge could have. This approach taught me to value my balance and maintain grace even in conflict situations. During this period, I began connecting with new projects and people who inspired personal and professional growth. I met Daniel, a balanced partner who brought genuine support and respect to my life. Unlike the past, the relationship wasn't based on need or lack, but on equality, understanding, and shared values. Learning to trust again was a gradual process, but the essential difference was that I now recognized my own worth before relying on anyone else to feel complete. This experience taught me that emotional reconstruction doesn't mean forgetting, but rather learning to love and trust with discernment. Financially, the independence that had previously seemed like a distant goal began to become a reality. Smart investments, detailed planning, and strategic decisions transformed my financial life, ensuring security and freedom. Each material achievement began to represent more than money. It symbolized my effort, resilience, and ability to overcome adversity. The feeling of autonomy became as satisfying as any external recognition, as it reminded me daily that no one could take from me what I had achieved with intelligence and dedication. This balance between emotion and rationality became the foundation of my overcoming challenges. One of the most defining moments of my transformation was realizing I could set clear boundaries without guilt. Before, I accepted situations that hurt my self-esteem and confidence. Later, I learned to say no and protect my emotional and personal space. This ability to define boundaries was liberating. Every assertive decision, whether at work or in my personal life, reinforced my sense of control and self-esteem. I learned that respect begins with self-respect, and that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in remaining true to one's principles, even in the face of external pressure or emotionally painful situations. In this process of rebuilding, I also realized the importance of forgiving myself for trusting and loving, even if others didn't deserve it. It wasn't about forgiving the betrayal, but about releasing the guilt I felt for having allowed myself to be hurt. This gesture was liberating, as it allowed me to focus on growth, happiness, and new horizons. Each step taken in this direction solidified the certainty that overcoming was not a temporary state, but a continuous path of learning and strengthening. The pain still existed, but now it served as an instructive memory, not an emotional prison. In the years that followed, my life transformed significantly. I focused on my investments, professional projects, and strengthening ties with the people who truly mattered. Each financial achievement was a reminder that I could thrive on my own without relying on those who betrayed me or external validation. The feeling of freedom and independence became part of my daily life, and I realized that the initial pain, though intense, had been essential in teaching me about self-sufficiency, emotional intelligence, and resilience. Today, I understand that overcoming adversity is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process that allows us to grow and better protect ourselves each day. My relationship with Daniel brought new meaning to my love life. Unlike the past, our connection was based on respect, balance, and companionship. I learned to recognize signs of genuine partnership and to value a love that adds to, not diminishes. The process of trusting again was gradual, and there were times when doubts arose, but the difference was that now I knew my worth and wouldn't settle for less than I deserved. This experience taught me that true love is built on trust, respect, and reciprocity, not on need or convenience. Psychologically, I noticed a profound transformation. That feeling of humiliation and helplessness I felt in the past was replaced by self-confidence and serenity. I learned to deal with frustrations without losing my dignity and to channel negative emotions constructively. Each challenge I faced after the betrayal strengthened me, and today I can face complex situations with clarity and emotional balance. My mind has become my greatest ally, and the pain that once paralyzed me has become fuel for growth and personal fulfillment. Today, I look back with pride on the journey I've traveled. Overcoming betrayal, rebuilding my self-esteem, achieving financial freedom, and establishing clear boundaries are tangible achievements that remind me daily of my strength. Each challenge I faced taught me resilience, self-knowledge, and empowerment. I know that not all wounds heal completely, but I've learned that it's possible to live fully, even while carrying painful memories. My life is now guided by conscious decisions, independence, and genuinely built happiness. By sharing my story, I hope to inspire others to see that overcoming is possible, even in the most painful situations. I learned that, even after the most profound betrayal, it is possible to rebuild, protect yourself, and thrive. The journey required intelligence, planning, and courage, but it brought me emotional autonomy, financial stability, and true love. Today, I know I can face any adversity because my strength doesn't depend on others. It comes from within, from the ability to learn from pain and transform each challenge into an opportunity. My story is not just about betrayal or loss, but about resilience, empowerment, and personal victory.